Elias pushed the mop across the shiny marble floor, the sound of water sliding over stone echoing softly through the vast halls of the imperial palace. Everywhere he looked, he saw alien shapes and colors, creatures tall and strange, with eyes that glowed like jewels or skin that shimmered like metal. He felt small, almost invisible, as if he were only part of the palace's furniture, not a person at all. He had been a janitor here for 3 years, moving from one endless corridor to the next, polishing floors, cleaning dust from statues, and making sure no corner of the palace showed even a hint of dirt. To the aliens he was nothing but a human, and humans were weak. They used humans only for the simplest tasks, thinking they were harmless and slow. Elias had long stopped caring about their judgment. He had learned to stay quiet, to work quickly, and to avoid drawing attention. Today was different though. A messenger had appeared at dawn, slipping a small note into his hands. It was not a usual instruction. The words were simple but heavy: "Dust the relic in the Hall of Records. The Emperor commands it." Elias paused, mop in hand, staring at the note. The Hall of Records was not like other parts of the palace. It was deep inside the oldest wing, a place rarely visited even by the Emperor's closest advisors. It was filled with objects so ancient that no one remembered their origin. Some were metal and cold, others carved from stones that seemed to hum faintly when touched. The aliens considered these relics to be old and useless. To them they were decorations, reminders of a past that no longer mattered. Elias walked through the palace, following the winding corridors, trying to remember the way. He had never been to the Hall of Records before. The walls seemed taller here, the ceiling higher, and the air cooler. Dust floated in the sunlight that fell through the stained glass windows, and for a moment, Elias felt like he was walking through history itself. He wondered about the beings who had made this place, and why the aliens valued control over curiosity. When he reached the Hall of Records, he stopped at the entrance. The room was enormous, filled with shelves and pedestals, each holding a relic older than anyone could say. Some looked like strange machines, others like carved statues, and in the center stood a tall, dark object resting on a pedestal. It was the relic he had been sent to dust. It was simple in shape, almost like a stone pillar, but there was something about it that made Elias hesitate. It was smooth and dark, with patterns etched into its surface that seemed to shift when he blinked. The aliens had always ignored it, assuming it had no power. To Elias it seemed alive. Not in a loud, scary way, but quiet, like it was waiting. He picked up his dust cloth and stepped closer. He ran his fingers gently over the surface, cleaning the layer of dust that had settled over centuries. A small spark of light flickered under his touch. Elias froze. The light vanished as quickly as it appeared, and he wondered if he had imagined it. "Just dust it, human," a voice boomed from behind him. Elias jumped and turned. The voice was the Emperor's, carried through the hall in a calm but commanding tone. The Emperor himself was standing there, tall and magnificent, with robes that shimmered in colors Elias couldn't name. His eyes were deep and sharp, like twin stars that could see everything. Elias bowed low. "Yes, Your Excellency," he said softly, his voice trembling. The Emperor looked at the relic and waved a hand dismissively. "It is old. It is meaningless. Dust it and leave it be." Elias nodded. He had learned long ago not to argue. He returned to the relic, pressing the cloth against it, wiping carefully. As he worked, he noticed something strange. The patterns on the relic seemed to move under his fingers, curling and shifting like living ink. He paused again, unsure if it was real or just his imagination. A quiet hum began to fill the hall, faint at first, like the sound of wind over distant mountains. Elias felt it in his chest, low and steady. He looked around, but the hall was empty, save for the Emperor, who was observing him with a faint frown. The human janitor wondered if the relic was reacting to him. That thought made his heart beat faster. He leaned closer and whispered under his breath, "I'm just cleaning. That's all." The hum grew slightly louder, but not frightening. It was curious, gentle, almost like the relic was acknowledging him. Elias straightened, unsure what was happening, and then realized the dust cloth had slipped from his hands. He picked it up, wiping again, but now more slowly, more carefully, as if he were touching something fragile. The Emperor raised an eyebrow. "Why does it seem different with you?" he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Elias said nothing. He continued cleaning, but in his chest, a small spark of something new had ignited. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, humans were not as weak as everyone thought. The sun was setting outside the palace windows, casting long shadows over the Hall of Records. Elias finished dusting the relic and stepped back. The faint hum lingered, and the patterns on the surface glowed softly for a moment, as if thanking him. No one else had ever noticed it before, but Elias had. And in that quiet, golden light, for the first time in his life, Elias felt that something extraordinary was beginning, and he was at the very center of it. Elias stayed in the Hall of Records long after he finished dusting the relic. The sun had disappeared behind the horizon, and soft lights glowed along the walls. The Emperor had left, and the hall was quiet again, except for the faint hum that seemed to come from the relic. Elias could not stop looking at it. There was something about it, something he could not explain, that made his chest feel warm and strange. He walked slowly around the pedestal, keeping a careful distance. The patterns on the relic were shifting again like lines of ink moving in water. Every time he stepped closer, the hum grew a little louder, almost like it was speaking in a language he could not understand. He knelt down and put a hand near it but did not touch it this time. Elias wondered who had made the relic. The aliens called it meaningless, but it did not feel meaningless to him. It felt old, very old, older than the palace itself. He thought about humans, how small and unimportant the aliens said they were. Maybe the humans who had lived a long time ago had something to do with this relic. Something important that the aliens had forgotten. He remembered stories his grandmother had told him long ago, stories about humans helping other species, teaching them and protecting things they did not even own. The aliens did not know those stories. They only knew conquest and rules. Elias smiled quietly. Maybe humans were not as powerless as everyone thought. Curious, he reached out his hand and gently touched the relic again. The hum became stronger, filling the hall, soft but warm. A faint light ran along the patterns, moving toward his hand. Elias felt a small shock, not painful but like a gentle tap. His heart raced, but he did not pull away. Something inside him told him it was safe. Suddenly, small shapes appeared in the air above the relic. They were like tiny symbols, glowing softly and floating as if they had weight. Elias blinked. He had never seen anything like this. He reached out, and the symbols seemed to move closer, forming lines and shapes that made no sense at first. But then, slowly he began to understand. It was a message. The symbols told a story of a time long before the Empire, a time when humans had been explorers and protectors. Humans had built or cared for this relic, teaching it, guarding it, and leaving a piece of themselves inside it. The relic recognized humans and it recognized him. That was why it reacted to his touch. Elias felt a mixture of awe and fear. No human had ever been in this hall without the Emperor's permission, and certainly no human had ever awakened the relic. And yet, here he was, standing in front of a living memory of his own people. He realized that the aliens had been wrong about humans all along. They were not weak, not meaningless. They were capable of things no one could see at first glance. He stayed there, quiet, letting the light flow along his fingers. A small part of him wished the Emperor could see this, but another part of him knew the aliens might not understand. The relic had chosen him, and perhaps it had been waiting for a human to appear again after many centuries. Elias took a deep breath and spoke softly, almost a whisper. "I am just a janitor," he said. "I am nothing. I just want to clean." The relic pulsed with light, almost like it was laughing at the idea. Elias smiled. He realized it did not need him to be powerful or brave. He only needed to be himself. His human touch, quiet and careful, had awakened something ancient. The hum grew stronger, but it was not loud enough to alert the palace guards. The room seemed to expand, and Elias could feel knowledge flowing into him, not like words in his head but like understanding. He saw glimpses of the past, humans traveling among stars, guiding civilizations, protecting worlds without seeking reward. He saw that humans had once been more than servants. They had been keepers of wisdom. Elias's mind spun with the realization. The aliens had forgotten this history, or maybe they had never known. Humans had always been underestimated, ignored, and overlooked. But here, in this quiet hall, Elias understood that his species had something no alien could take away: patience, care, and a quiet strength. He stepped back, feeling the relic's hum slowly settle. The light dimmed but did not disappear. It seemed to say that it would wait, that it would remember, and that it would trust humans again. Elias touched it one last time and felt a gentle warmth spread through his hand. As he turned to leave, he heard the soft click of the palace doors behind him. He froze. The Emperor was standing there, tall and curious, his eyes wide with surprise. Elias bowed quickly. "Do you understand what you are touching, human?" the Emperor asked. His voice was calm but carried a hint of something new: uncertainty. I don't know everything," Elias replied. "But it feels alive. To remember something. It seems to know humans." The Emperor frowned, but he did not step forward. He had never seen a human move or speak with this kind of quiet confidence. In his long life he had only seen humans as small, weak, and obedient. Now one human stood in front of him, connected to something ancient and powerful. Elias nodded once, then turned and left the hall. He carried no pride, no anger, no desire for power. He had simply done his job and discovered something incredible. The relic had awakened not because of strength or skill, but because of a human's simple touch and steady hands. The hum faded behind him, leaving only the quiet knowledge that humans were more than anyone had believed. And for the first time, Elias felt a spark of hope, not just for himself but for all humans who had been underestimated for far too long. Elias returned to the Hall of Records the next morning, even before the palace had fully awakened. The corridors were quiet, filled only with the soft echoes of his footsteps. The relic stood at the center of the hall, dark and silent, but something about it felt different now. It was no longer just an old object. It seemed to watch him, waiting as if it remembered the touch from yesterday. He stepped closer and reached out carefully. The moment his fingers brushed the smooth surface, a pulse of light ran along the patterns, stronger than before. The hum returned, steady and warm, filling the hall like a gentle song. Elias felt it in his chest, a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. He smiled faintly. Somehow the relic knew him. Somehow it trusted him. As he cleaned the remaining dust, tiny symbols appeared above the relic again. This time they were brighter, more detailed, forming shapes that seemed to float in the air. Elias tilted his head, trying to understand. Slowly the symbols moved together, forming images of stars, planets, and strange machines. He realized that the relic was not just a memory, it was a record of something ancient and important. The Emperor's voice suddenly echoed through the hall, startling Elias. "What is happening here?" Elias turned to see the Emperor standing at the entrance, flanked by his advisors. His tall figure cast a long shadow over the marble floor. His eyes, sharp and piercing, were fixed on the relic. Elias bowed slightly. "I do not know, Your Excellency. It seems alive. It is showing me something." The Emperor frowned. He had seen many powerful objects in his long life, but nothing like this. The relic pulsed with light, filling the hall, and Elias could feel the energy without fear. It was gentle, not dangerous, but undeniable. The aliens had always ignored it, calling it meaningless. Now they could not. The symbols shifted again, forming scenes from the past. Elias saw humans traveling between worlds, helping other civilizations, and protecting knowledge that no one else understood. He realized that the relic was showing him the truth. Humans had once been more than servants or laborers. They had been explorers, teachers, guardians of wisdom. "Impossible," muttered one of the Emperor's advisors. "Humans are weak. They have never done anything of value." Elias looked at them quietly. He did not speak with pride or anger. Instead he reached out and touched the relic once more. The light pulsed stronger, spreading across the hall. The symbols became clearer, forming images that even the Emperor could understand. Humans guiding civilizations, building machines to protect knowledge, and leaving messages of peace and wisdom. The Emperor took a step forward, his eyes widening. He had believed humans were insignificant, but here was proof that they had once held power in a different way, power of patience, care, and understanding. Elias could see the change in the Emperor's expression. For the first time the great ruler seemed uncertain, almost humble. Elias spoke softly. "The relic responds to humans. Remembers us. It remembers what we were capable of, what we could do without fighting or conquering. It is not a weapon. It is a teacher." The Emperor studied Elias closely. "And you, understand it?" "I understand enough," Elias said, bowing his head. "It is showing me that humans were never truly powerless. We were just forgotten." A low hum spread through the hall, louder now, filling every corner. The relic's light reflected on the walls, creating patterns that seemed alive. The Emperor and his advisors watched in silence as the ancient object shared its knowledge. It was not threatening. It was patient, showing history as it had always existed, waiting for the right hands to touch it again. Elias felt a strange warmth. He realized that the relic was not just responding to him, it was choosing him. It trusted humans again after centuries of being ignored. He did not feel pride, only responsibility. If he could learn from it, maybe humans could rise again, not through war but through understanding and wisdom. The Emperor took a deep breath. "So, humans were never as weak as we believed?" "No," Elias replied. "We have strength, but it is quiet. It is careful. It grows slowly and it protects life instead of taking it. That is why the relic responds to us." The symbols above the relic shifted one last time, forming a glowing map of stars, with small points of light representing humans traveling among them. Elias could see the future it suggested, humans and aliens working together, learning from each other, sharing knowledge instead of ruling through fear. The Emperor fell silent, staring at the relic, then at Elias. He had underestimated this species for too long, and now he could not ignore the truth. Elias had no weapons, no armies, yet he had awakened something more powerful than any conquest. The hall grew quiet again, the light dimming but not disappearing. The relic had spoken. It had revealed a history that demanded respect. The Emperor finally nodded slowly, his pride tempered by awe. Elias stepped back and smiled faintly. He had done nothing extraordinary by the world's measure. He had simply touched the relic with steady hands and an honest heart. But that was enough. That small act had reminded the universe of what humans could be: guardians, not conquerors; wise, not violent; patient, not reckless. And for the first time in his life, Elias felt that humans were more than what the Empire believed. He felt that perhaps one day they could reclaim a place in the stars, not through power or force but through understanding and care. As he left the Hall of Records, the hum of the relic followed him quietly, like a whisper. Elias knew that this was only the beginning. Something ancient had awakened, and it had chosen him to help humans rise again, not as servants but as equals. Elias returned to the Hall of Records the next day, carrying only a small cloth and a bucket of water. He did not know why he felt drawn here, but something inside him told him that the relic had more to show. The hall was quiet, the sun casting soft light through the tall windows, and the air smelled faintly of old stone and time. As he approached the relic, the hum began again, low and gentle. The patterns on its surface shifted like water, and tiny glowing symbols floated above it. Elias could feel a calm energy surrounding him, as if the relic recognized his presence and welcomed him. He knelt down and touched it lightly. The hum grew warmer, filling the hall, and the symbols rearranged themselves into shapes that seemed like doors, paths, and constellations. Suddenly the relic pulsed brighter than ever, and a soft voice filled Elias's mind. It was not loud or frightening, only gentle, like a whisper carried on the wind. "You have awakened me," the voice said. "Human. You are the one I have waited for. I can show you knowledge, but it is not power. It is understanding." Elias blinked. He had never heard a voice like this before, but somehow he understood it perfectly. He nodded. "I want to understand," he said softly. "I do not seek power. I only want to learn." The relic's light expanded, filling the hall, and Elias felt himself lifted, not in body but in mind. He saw visions of ancient worlds, of humans traveling among stars, teaching and protecting life. He saw civilizations that had been guided by humans, learning not through fear but through wisdom. And he saw the mistakes humans had made too, the times when pride or anger had led to loss. But through it all he understood a single truth: humans had always been capable of greatness, not through force but through care and patience. The Emperor entered the hall quietly, watching Elias with curiosity. He had been following him, trying to understand what was happening. For the first time the Emperor did not speak with anger or command. He simply observed, his eyes wide with awe as the relic's light danced across the walls. Elias spoke, not to the Emperor but to the relic. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. The voice answered softly, "You may choose. You may take this knowledge and guide others, or you may walk away and remain unnoticed. The choice is yours. But know this: the path you take will shape how humans are remembered in the future." Elias thought for a long moment. He could feel the weight of the choice pressing on him, heavier than any bucket he had ever carried, heavier than any mop he had ever pushed across the palace floors. He could ask for power, for influence, for recognition. But he did not want those things. What he wanted was something simple: fairness, understanding, and a chance for humans to be respected, not feared or dismissed. "I will not seek power for myself," he said finally. "I will only ask that humans be seen as they truly are, that they have a chance to show their value to others." The relic pulsed brighter, as if pleased. Symbols of stars, planets, and humans floating among them appeared above it, forming a glowing map of possibilities. The voice spoke again, softer this time. "Your choice is wise. You have chosen responsibility over ambition. You have chosen care over force. This will change many things." The Emperor stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Elias. "You chose this freely?" he asked, disbelief in his tone. "Yes," Elias said calmly. "I do not want to rule. I only want humans to be treated fairly. That is enough." The relic's light spread across the hall, touching the Emperor and his advisors. For the first time they saw humans not as weak servants, but as beings capable of wisdom, patience, and quiet strength. It was not a lesson of fear or punishment, but a lesson of truth. The Emperor felt humility he had never known, realizing how much he had misjudged an entire species. Elias stepped back and wiped his hands on his cloth. The relic's light dimmed slightly, but it did not disappear. It had shared its knowledge and made its choice known. Elias understood that this was only the beginning. The relic would guide humans if they chose to listen, but it required patience and care, not force. The Emperor finally spoke, his voice quieter than usual. Perhaps, humans have value beyond what I imagined. Perhaps we have been wrong. Elias nodded, bowing slightly. Yes, Your Excellency. We are not strong in the way you expect. But we are capable of things you cannot see until you pay attention. We protect, we teach, we endure. That is our strength. The Emperor was silent, reflecting on what he had witnessed. He had conquered countless worlds, ruled over thousands of species, but he had never been shown a lesson like this. One that required no battle, no threat, only honesty, patience, and care. Elias turned to leave the hall, feeling the relic's hum softly fading behind him. He had made his choice and it was the right one. He had not sought power, but he had awakened something far more important: recognition and respect for humanity. He realized that the smallest actions could have the greatest consequences. A janitor's touch had changed the way the Emperor saw humans, and perhaps one day it would change the galaxy. As he walked through the palace corridors, Elias felt light in his chest. He carried no pride, only purpose. The relic had given him knowledge, but it was his choices that would shape the future. He knew he could guide others not through force, but by showing what humans were truly capable of. And for the first time he felt hope, not just for himself but for all humans who had been underestimated for so long. The hum of the relic lingered in his mind like a quiet song. Elias smiled, knowing that he had chosen well. The future was uncertain, but it was full of possibility. And sometimes he thought the smallest hands could hold the greatest power. Elias returned to his usual work after the events in the Hall of Records, but something had changed. The palace no longer seemed quite as cold or empty. The corridors, the marble floors, the statues, all of it felt different, as if the air itself had shifted. Even the aliens who passed him in the hall looked at him differently now. They were curious, respectful, though cautious. No one spoke of it directly, but everyone had noticed the change. The relic had awakened, shared its knowledge, and chosen him. Elias knew that the power he had touched was not something to wield carelessly. It was not a weapon to dominate others or a tool to command respect. It was a teacher, a reminder of what humans were capable of when they were patient, steady, and wise. The Emperor came to the Hall of Records himself later that day. Elias was there, wiping dust from the edge of a pedestal. The relic glowed softly, humming in recognition. The Emperor approached slowly, his steps echoing across the polished floors. He looked at Elias and then at the relic, his usual pride replaced by something softer: understanding. "You have shown me something I never expected," the Emperor said quietly. "Humans, I see now that we have underestimated your species. You have strength we cannot measure with armies or weapons. You have wisdom and patience, and through that you have awakened this relic." Elias bowed his head. "I did nothing remarkable, Your Excellency. I only touched it carefully. I did not seek to control it, and I did not seek glory. It responded because of what humans are capable of, not because of what I am." The Emperor studied him for a long moment. "Perhaps I have judged too quickly," he said. "Perhaps we should pay more attention to the humans in our service. Perhaps we should learn from you instead of assuming you are small and weak." Elias nodded. "Yes, that would be wise. Humans are patient. We endure. We care. And when given the chance, we protect and guide." The Emperor smiled faintly, a smile that carried respect rather than pride. It was the first time Elias had seen the ruler's face soften in such a way. For centuries the aliens had thought themselves superior, but now they were learning a new truth. Greatness did not always show itself through power or conquest. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and patient. The relic continued to hum, its soft light filling the hall like a gentle sunrise. It had shared its knowledge, but it also seemed content to rest now, waiting for the next human to come and touch it, to learn again as Elias had. He realized that this was not the end but the beginning of a new chapter, not just for him but for all humans. In the days that followed, changes began quietly. The Emperor began consulting humans more often, asking for their advice in matters of culture, science, and diplomacy. The aliens were surprised, but Elias noticed that respect replaced the usual condescension. Humans began to participate in ways that had once been denied to them. They were still janitors, workers and servants in many places, but their voices were heard in ways they never had been before. Elias continued his work, cleaning floors, dusting relics and maintaining the palace, but he did so with a quiet pride. He had not sought recognition or titles. That was not his way. He understood that his strength was in what he did every day, in the care he took in small actions, and in the steady heart he carried. The relic had awakened, yes, but it was his choices that truly mattered. One evening, as the sun set behind the palace, casting golden light through the tall windows, Elias stood before the relic one last time for the day. He placed a hand on its surface gently, feeling the familiar hum. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting me and for remembering." The relic pulsed softly in response, as if acknowledging his words. Elias smiled and stepped back, turning to leave the hall. As he walked through the corridors, he noticed that the palace felt warmer, brighter, alive in a way it had never been before. He knew that the relic had not changed the world by itself. He had helped it awaken, but it was the humans who would carry the lesson forward. Patience, care, and quiet strength could create respect and understanding across the stars. He returned to his workbench, polishing the floors and tidying small spaces, just as he had always done. But now, each sweep of the mop, each careful wipe, carried a meaning he had never felt before. It was a reminder that even the smallest acts could have great consequences, that even the simplest human could awaken something extraordinary. The Emperor passed by, giving Elias a nod of recognition. No words were needed. In that silent moment, Elias felt the truth of what had happened. Humans had been underestimated, but they had risen, not through war, not through fear, but through humility, patience, and steady courage. And as Elias continued his quiet work, he realized something important. True strength was not measured by power, or armies, or conquest. True strength was in the heart, in the care one gave, and in the courage to do the right thing even when no one was watching. The relic glowed softly behind him, a silent witness, a teacher, and a reminder. And Elias knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning of humanity's rise, quiet, patient, and wise, ready to shine among the stars. The palace was vast and filled with history, but now, among all the stone, the statues, and the alien visitors, a human had made his mark, not with weapons, not with force, but with something far greater: understanding, care, and quiet strength. Elias picked up his mop and continued his work, smiling faintly to himself. The relic had awakened. Humanity had awakened. And the universe was watching, ready to remember.